Konnichiwa, minasan. Hello, everyone, and we are here for another day of album discussions. Today, we will talk about the sixth album in the series and my fifth solo album. What's great about this album is I apologize for the delay in starting today. It's kind of been hectic. I was looking for my scripts, oddly enough, on a USB. I couldn't find the USB. And there's been a lot of noise going on today. So if you hear background noise, I do apologize in advance. But yeah, we will definitely get into it in a moment. I'm just going to share this quickly on social media and whatnot. That way we can spread the word, so to speak, right? Just give me one moment and we will get right into it. It's a pretty jam-packed day today, we'll say, people. To say the least, it's a lot of stuff going on today. Right, that's posted on Facebook, now Twitter. Okay. Right, there we go. Just posted that. Okay. Now we will get right into it. Okay, so with the fifth solo album and the sixth album in our presentation, we will talk about the album called My Unique Valentine. Now, because this was a pretty short album, we might actually finish this broadcast shorter than usual. I try to not go too much over an hour or go around an hour, but this album is really short. It's only 10 tracks and 41 minutes long. Probably one of my shortest albums throughout it. The only reason it has a decent amount of length to it is because some songs on it are relatively long. Like the second track is almost 6 minutes, it's 5 minutes and 45 seconds long, and the final track is 9 minutes and 20 seconds. So that's what gives it its overall length, because otherwise it would have been very short. But the idea was not to make an album too long, but just an album that, expanded on ideas and was very true to sort of the nature of the sound and telling the story. Because the album is a concept album. It's a very story kind of related album. Now, with My Unique Valentine, it was kind of an exciting endeavor to do this album because it was the first record that I had fully produced all by myself of my solo records, all mixed, mastering, everything was done by me. And I was going through an experience with a girl that I liked at the time named Shannon. And that was pretty much what all the songs revolve around. Oddly enough, she had stood me up New Year's Day. She was supposed to come over for the S.O.S. Brigade's official debut album release record party. And I was going to hopefully spend time with the rest of the band. They kind of bailed on me. I still never understood why they did that. But yeah, I ended up drinking by myself. I was pissed. Not gonna lie, I was not happy about that. That really made me mad. And then they stood me up then. And then oddly enough, they were supposed to spend Valentine's Day with me and they stood me up as well. And then they started talking about some other guy. They were posting pictures with some other guy. And it really just pissed me off to the point I completely gave up on them, just to make a long story short in that regard. But that's who the album was about. So the album, though, itself did turn out pretty good, especially because it's a conceptual album. It's based on the story itself. And it was really when I was starting to bridge into the jazz idea of making music. So you hear a lot of like really jazzy elements to it. It was really heavily inspired and like the song title and even the album title, My Unique Valentine, because there's a song named after the album. That's actually a reference to the Chet Baker version of My Funny Valentine, which I really liked the song. I found out when I was singing a lot of Chet Baker songs that I could sing like him. In fact, I referenced that in the last episode of our album discussions. So I wanted to cover a song, but I still wanted to kind of change it a bit and make it so it was more like I was telling my story, but just kind of referencing the original Chet Baker classic. Not to take it away from him, but sort of do my own spin on it and make it my own, right? So the album starts off with the Future intro, featuring the return of Kira L, which was the first time he fully had an actual record appearance in a long time, but kind of brought him back to do the intro of, okay, where is things heading? This is right when I was starting to study personal development, the law of attraction, law of assumption, manifesting, all that stuff, mysticism. So there was the idea of, okay, living as though the future was now. And that concept kind of came to mind. And I was really hoping for the best, especially with the romantic situation, which is why I ended up making the album this way. So, yeah, the Future intro is Kira L. Basically starting off the idea with music in the beginning mostly, and then Kira L just kind of says the message that, like, I still had feelings for Shannon or whatever at the end. And that starts off the album. And then it leads right into the title track, My Unique Valentine, which starts off me doing like the backup instrumentation along with the original composition of My Funny Valentine, but making it My Unique Valentine and changing it slightly. And I start off singing it almost a lot like how Chet Baker sang it his way, but in a lower tone. And then the beat kind of picks up, it shifts. There's rapping, there's more singing, and a completely different style of the song kind of shifts focus about halfway into the song. So it makes it like a completely unique song because it's almost like there's two acts of the song. Like it really shifts the idea and the sound and the vibe, like almost like it starts really low, like sort of like it's almost like it's referencing where it would have left me prior to Valentine's Day, and then the hope that Valentine's Day was going to go well. Sadly, it didn't, but I guess everything happens for a good reason, and I have Hitomi-chan now. So it all worked out for the best anyway. I'm not even going to dwell on the negativity of that situation. So after that, which it was kind of the experience of I had feelings for them, but they kind of were just playing games and leading me on. So especially the Unique Valentine playing games leads into the third track, which is Unrequited Law. And that was a song that, like, I got the idea of that not only by my situation, but I was rewatching the anime Nana at the time, and that's one of my favorite animes. I've rewatched it so many times. But Reiko, I'm saying Reiko because I always relate Reiko, my friend who sang all with many songs with me, right? I relate the idea to the character Rayra in the show because, like, she's like the lead singer of this rock band Trapness. And I always kind of looked at Reiko as like almost being like a real life similar version to that. It's kind of funny because she lives in America. Rayra is actually part American, part Japanese. So there was that similar quality that I always could relate to. That. That's why I said that. I'm like, that's so funny. But I'm like, well, I always could relate the two together. So I'm sure you can understand why I made that mistake. But yeah, in one episode, she was talking about how she used to date the character Yasu, and Rayra said, like, oh, unrequited love. And it was kind of the idea of that. And knowing what it meant, it kind of stood out to me like a sore thumb. I was like, oh, I should make a song about that because I could relate, right? And yeah, what's cool about this album is I did all the production, all the instrumentation myself. Only one song really was co-written by somebody else, which is really the Chet Baker classic revamped. It was co-written by somebody else. I just changed the lyrics, the beat, all the other stuff. But it was originally from that. But all the rest was written by me, composed by me, produced by me, mixed and mastered. So it was my first album fully solo, doing everything by myself. I mean, we have Kira L doing the intro. We have Denine doing an intro too on a track. And then we have Little Buckingham and Vlad rapping some verses on the next song, which was called Not Appreciated. As you could imagine, we were going in the direction of how things were actually progressing with everything at that point in not only my romantic situation, but with the music. So there was the reference of that. And that's where they came in. And that really goes into a darker sound, whereas the Unrequited Love almost has like a more hopeful, optimistic vibe. Like maybe they just don't see that I'm genuine, and maybe they will come to like me at the time. So there was that hopeful optimism, whereas Not Appreciated was focusing on the idea of as good as I am in, as a person, as a romantic partner, as an artist, I'm not appreciated the way I deserve, which was true. I really wasn't at the time. I'm starting to get more appreciated, which, by the way, thanks to everybody who has been checking out Bokumo Aishiteru Yo, which was made for Hitomi. We've now cracked to almost 2,500 views. Keep it going. This is really just phenomenal for me, because in just 4 days, this song has blown up and become my most viewed song and most successful song I've made. And of course, it comes from the heart because I love Hitomi. So it's just wonderful that everybody is reacting to it so well. I get a lot of praise from Japanese people. Even North Americans really seem to dig it and say, like, hey, it's catchy. It's a really good song. And I'm even like, shit, I should just be a Japanese pop singer at this point. Seems like they love me singing Japanese pop more than anything. And it's funny because as I sit there and I think about it too, I'm like, I've always been singing Japanese songs. Even since I was a kid, when I would watch anime, I would sing along with the theme songs. And I always loved doing that. But I guess I was kind of shy to actually do it. Whereas, with this song, I wanted to make a song all in Japanese for Hitomi, like so that she would fully understand it. And also, I will assume the best for her, send her positive energy, love, and light, because she's actually been running a fever and she's got a sore throat. So hopefully, I will just assume that she's already recovered, even if there's no evidence of that, and send the positive intention out there in the universe, especially because I love her. I would want the best for her. So. And definitely, if you're religious and you believe in praying or assuming or whatever, send positive energy to her, because I definitely would want to see her well again. And I'm sure she'll recover. I don't think it's too serious, but just want the best for her, right? So yeah, from Not Appreciated, you get really into the depth of what my past romantic situations were like, as well as my own music career. And then it leads into a very jazzy, just purely instrumental blues composition called Don't Get Ghosted Blues, which was, I felt like I was getting ghosted by Shannon. So I basically channeled my frustration into that melody and that instrumental composition, where I played mostly the tenor sax leading it and then composed all the other instrumentation around it. Now, the most popular song on the record, the one that's got the most views, the one I made is like the single and recorded a music video, which was really trying to show my own self confidence. I was showing like, hey, I'm fit, I'm attractive, I'm good, I'm the man. I know what I'm doing. I can sing good, I rap good, I make all these great songs. But I just got to be patient. People will appreciate it and see it in time, right? So patience is a virtue came about that way, because it was the idea of maybe I should just be patient, give her some space, give her some time. Maybe she'll realize what she lost and missed out on. And then I got to be patient with myself, because I know my own self-worth. I know what I deserve. And I have a lot more self-confidence than I had at the beginning of making this record, and even at the beginning of this year and the journey I've been on. So I just kind of decided enough was enough at the start of this year after what I went through last year. So yeah, "Patience is a Virtue" is the most popular song from the record. It's got a few hundred views, I think 300 or so. It's around there. The music video got a lot of likes. It was really well received. I got some good comments and feedback about it. Somebody said something which I didn't even understand what they were referring to, and I even said, "What do you mean?" Like, and they never clarified. So it's like maybe they were just being a hater. Who knows, right? But everybody else seemed to really like the song and agreed it was like probably the most positive, productive song from the record, and I would agree with that too. Probably the most happy self-confident moment of the record. A beautiful song in that regard. So patience is a virtue. It was the idea of like the saying patience is a virtue, and turning that into a song and relating it to my own situation, and also, the self-confidence aspect, like knowing my own self-worth, that hey, I don't deserve to get treated like that. I should just let things unfold as the universe has in mind what's best for me. And then we lead into another instrumental position, which is just purely instrumentation, called the Japanese Jazz Train, or JJ Train in brackets. And that was the idea of making like a really fast, like Japanese pop, but jazz kind of composition, and like kind of blending the two together, because I really love the ideas of those two music like being formed together. So that was the idea of that. And it's also a reference to like Duke Ellington's composition, Take the A Train, which me and the S.O.S. Brigade covered. I did this all by myself. I laid out all the instrumentation, and then I played the saxophone to kind of lead the whole thing through it. So that was very cool to make that song. That was actually one of my personal favorites from my Unique Valentine as a record. I actually really loved the Japanese Jazz Train, and I felt that that was one of the best songs to make on the record. The next one was a very cool song because Rob Lowe was actually mentioned in the song, and he actually positively encouraged me with the song. It was cool because he's got like what he calls the lowdown line on Twitter, where you can actually call him and leave questions and he gets back to you. And it was very cool because I asked him, like, has anybody else ever made you a song before? I was like, I love your work, and like 911 Lone Star and The Outsiders and even Stephen King's The Stand. Like, I was like, has anybody ever actually made you a song? Like, you're cool. I really like your acting or whatever. You're very funny. You've done a lot of good roles. And the way he overcame drugs and certain personal struggles was kind of inspiring to me at the beginning of my journey this year, right? So he said, no, nobody's ever done it. So I was like, well, is it okay if I like give you a shout out in the song? He'd be like, yeah, that's really cool. And I said, well, if we ever meet, especially because of like what I had written about, like, he's the kind of nice guy, he's just so genuine. Like, if you wanted some corn on the cob, he'd give it to you if he had it, right? Like, that's how he is. And it was very funny because I was like, based on what I wrote, we talked about this after I had actually released the song. The song did pretty well. The Nine did the intro on it. And then, like, I rapped about, like, calling up Rob Lowe for some corn on the cob, right? So I was like, well, if we ever have like a barbecue or something and we get to actually meet or hang out, we'd have to definitely cook up some corn on the cob just to like, actually reflect the song, which he thought was funny. And we talked about it. And I even explained like my situation with the album and, liking Shannon at the time and all this. And he kind of encouraged me. He said, if that's how you feel, just go with it. I mean, if they ain't with it, it's not really your fault, but at least you're being true to yourself. So it was very good, positive encouragement and feedback from, Rob Lowe to tell me that. So it was really wonderful. And yeah, it was just cool that I actually got to talk to him. So that's what inspired like the song Corn on the Cob. And then we get into the third purely instrumental piece, which is Romantic Anxieties, which was sort of reflecting like not only the past but the current situation with Shannon, wondering what's going on and trying to persist and have faith. I mean, I actually made an album that was originally going to be titled An Album for Shannon, which I changed to Parallel Universe. It will be released this month as well, just in case anybody's excited and wants to hear it. I changed the title and I added a few other songs just because, especially because she bailed on me and ghosted me. Well, she doesn't really deserve an album. Whereas I still made an album for Hitomi Shimatani, even though she's busy, because she responds when she can. She's a lot more sweet and loving and generous and kind towards me. And that would be released on her birthday. So as you could tell, there's a difference in the level of appreciation, which is why I'm so much more grateful for Hitomi and her love, support, and encouragement. But yeah, Romantic Anxieties was purely instrumental, very jazzy, bluesy. It was just the idea of the feelings that accompany, like when you're waiting for somebody to text you or respond to you or get back. And I was doing all this meditation. I was saying all these affirmations. I was trying all these different techniques. And it just seemed like the more I tried, the more distant she became. So I was just like, you know what? I give up. This isn't even worth it. One day I was so frustrated. I was in such a negative vibration, which romantic anxieties would reflect that. I was like, why am I getting up at 5 in the morning doing all this work for somebody who's like not even appreciating me, who's like so mediocre? Like, if I could really have any specific person I wanted, why am I not aiming for somebody so much better, like the best? I'm like, I know I deserve better. I've already had better. So I was like, what am I doing aiming for this Shannon girl? And then I was singing Japanese songs to try and lift up my mood. And it sort of worked, but I was still like pissed off. I admit I was still smoking then. I like ended up smoking like 10 cigarettes in a row because I was pissed. I was in a negative vibration, right? And it was so funny because then all of a sudden it started playing songs by Hitomi Shimatani, and I started singing those, and I actually felt better. And then it was like a light bulb went off in my head. I'm like, wait, why am I like going for somebody so mediocre? If I could have anybody, shouldn't I be going for the best? I was like, well, who is the best? So I stopped to ask myself, and I was like, well, Hitomi's the best. I've always loved Hitomi. Like, if I could pick anybody in the whole world, and I like even wrote out a list, I was like, who would be if I could have anybody? No limits, no barriers, no nothing. If I could go for anybody and actually be with them, who would I pick? So I wrote out a list, and Hitomi was number one. So I was like, okay, well, that's who I should go for then. Might seem crazy, but I was like, well, that's what I'm going for. I should go for the best, the biggest goal, the C type goal. I don't know how the hell to get there, but it's the greatest. It's the best. If I had that, everything would just be wonderful, right? So I assume that I have that, imagine that I have that already. And, you go from there. You follow like the law of attraction, the law of assumption, the manifesting process, you go for it, right? But I was like, well, I shouldn't be going for such a mediocre goal. And because it was such a battle with like trying to get Shannon's attention, when it was like, oh, come on, man. Yeah, she's local, but I mean, she has 3 kids. She's older than me. I mean, he told me he's older than me, but I kind of like older women. So that's not a bad thing in Hitomi's case. He's more mature anyway. But I was like, Shannon's really average and mediocre. Like, what am I doing going for this, right? And not to say that she didn't say nice things to me, which I'm grateful she did. Maybe that was positive encouragement that she was meant to say to lead me further down the path that I'm on with the universe and spirituality and whatnot, right? But I was like, oh, I could do way better than this. I should be going for the best, not something mediocre. But that battle, that became the idea behind a war of the heart, hypnotized bracket. Because I was hypnotized. I was so focused and fixated on the idea of this. But really, as I look back in retrospect, I'm like, I don't know why I was so like insistent upon this when it really was so mediocre and average. And I was like, you know what? It really is their loss that they didn't have me, because I really was good to them and I was genuine and I would have treated them like a queen. So having self worth, self confidence, I know I deserve better anyway. I don't really hold negativity towards them anymore. I send them love, light, and gratitude for as kind as they were. But they didn't appreciate me. I mean, they chose somebody else over me who they bitched and complained about in their social media post after anyway. And it's like they ghosted me and they don't even respond now. It's almost like it's out of shame or embarrassment that they could have had somebody better and chose some other person that wasn't half as good as me over me. But oh well, love, light, and gratitude, and I wish them the best. I've already found better, so I'm working towards that. And yeah, like A War of the Heart was really, it was a very long song. So there was a lot of work in it. There was multiple solos. There was many parts that were sung. There were a lot of rapped verses. So it really was almost like a trilogy kind of song, but a very lengthy trilogy kind of song. Actually, a song that comes to mind that really probably played a major influence on A War of the Heart and Hypnotized is the song, Yeah, it's by Genesis. I gotta look it up just because I'm like sitting here wondering. I'm like, what was that one really long Genesis song that was on like their last album as a full book? Something about um driving the last spike. That's what it was. I was trying to think of what the title was. I had to look it up. I knew it had spike in the title, right? Like you're coming to the end of the railroad and you're hammering the final spike into the tracks, right? That played a big influence on like the length, the time, and why that became such a musical piece. Hypnotized was a reference to the old Slip Rick song and even what Biggie did when he made Hypnotized. And then A War of the Heart was that it was this internal battle trying to get their attention and this conflict, which, led to everything and made it such a rocky upside down sort of romantic album. Like I can look back at this album, I'm like, it was intended to be a very romantic album, but there was a lot of pain to have unrequited love and have romantic feelings for somebody that just didn't feel the same way back and treated me like crap. And I know I deserve better than that. I have way more self-confidence and a higher standard of my own self-worth to the point I would never put up with that crap and ever again. So in the sense, it was a learning experience. I look back on that album is it was very deep. I was very emotionally vulnerable, but I broke new ground musically. It was the first album that I ever produced, did all the songs myself, mixed and mastered, all my own instrumentation. I wrote almost all the songs completely by myself. And the fact that it was a learning experience, like it helped me grow as an individual after making this album because I knew that I wasn't going to settle for less than what I deserved. And it raised the bar of my own personal standards. So, looking back on that album, I could honestly say it was a very special album in its own way. It was very painful to go through the situations around it, but I'm grateful for the experience. There's a lot of sadness, there's a lot of heartache throughout the record, but overall, it's kind of what makes the album a beautiful story is that it was having that unique Valentine who really should have treated me better and treated me the way I deserved, motivating me and inspiring me to make this record. And really, sort of like you're seeing the world through rose colored glasses, and you take the rose colored glasses off, and you realize, like, this isn't really as great or as nice or as wonderful as I thought it was. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? Right. And you stop and you kind of ask yourself that. It's like, shouldn't I really be going for what I really want? And I'll put it this way, because I was studying like the law of attraction, the law of assumption, manifesting, all that stuff at the time, right? I could honestly say the interesting fact with the experience of this record too was we learned in this, I learned this from Bob Proctor, that there's three types of goals that people, if they plan a goal, they go for. A type goal is something you already know how to do. Like you already had it, you've already experienced it, so you know how to do it. A B type goal is something you think you can do. You say, oh, well, if I did this, I did that, I could probably do it. You think you can do it. But see, that's not really that much goal because there's not that much growth attached. And I can tell you from personal experience, I stopped smoking marijuana. I did stop biting my nails, and I'm still working on the cigarettes, but I'm making more and more progress with that. I mean, everybody falls down with some of the struggles, but it's when you're willing to keep getting back up and keep persisting towards it, that's how you know you're really making progress, right? But I can honestly say that I grew so much more as an individual when I started going for Hitomi. And I have already become closer to her than I have would have ever imagined. If you told me a few months ago or years ago, like, oh, you're going to be able to actually talk to Hitomi Shimatani, you're going to have her autograph, you're going to make her a song that's fully in Japanese, I'd be like, what? Hontoni? Like, really? Like, I would have just been shocked. Like, so to actually look at how far I've come since that record ended and I started moving on the path towards that, it's a drastic change. You would need a telescope to look back on where I was to where I am now. And I keep growing. I keep progressing towards the realization of a worthy ideal, which is the definition of success in itself. And well, especially because this album's so short, there was actually another 10-track album that I did after this, which sort of served as like a part two to the experience. When I still had hope that things were going to work out with this Shannon girl, and that became Expressions of One's Heart, which I experimented. I broke a lot more ground. It was really a very soulful album, which I'm very proud of that as well. I'm not going to talk about that in today's episode. I'm going to leave that for tomorrow's episode. This episode is actually going to be very short just because my Unique Valentine was such a short record. There's not really a lot of crazy stories I could tell you about making it, because it was like, if I dwelled on everything regarding making the record, it would be kind of a depressing video. Like, I'm trying to tell the story, but also mostly focus on the good of making the record. There really wasn't that much good, but the growth, the learning experiences, the lessons from it were definitely the highlights of making it. And that was my favorite part of making the record, is how much I grew as a result of being brutally honest, bearing my heart and soul, and actually saying, like, this is like this. I don't like this. I'm not happy with this. But it was being true to myself. And that was the positive sort of personal growth associated with making the record. Now, tomorrow we will talk about Expressions of One's Heart, and that has a lot more of the positive aspects of what it was like to pursue Shannon, go after her. And I saved a lot of those record like songs for that record, because there was a lot of new positive personal growth and experiences with making that song. And there was a lot more of a positive energy when I was in the vibration of making Expressions of One's Heart. So overall, that's why I had a much more broadened, soulful vibe. We'll discuss it more tomorrow. But yeah, big influences on making that record were two soul artists, Ray Charles, sort of the high priest of soul, and then Brenda Russell, who was actually a fantastic inspiration. In fact, I could also say she was kind of the inspiration which told me to just let go of Shannon and move forward. But as I said, that whole album that I also recorded purely for her, that would have originally been released on her birthday, it won't now. It's been changed, added a few songs. It will be called The Parallel Reality 2, and that will be released near the end of August. And I will definitely keep the audience posted on that. Now, like I said, in conclusion, since we're almost near the end of where we will end today's broadcast and discussion, is just, I would advise people, same as always, like, check it out on YouTube if you like it. Definitely, because artists who aren't backed by a major record label or management or promoters and producers and marketing people and all this, we kind of struggle to get the funding to make music sometimes, and it does cost money to make music. So knowing that I've made all this great music, I'd want to keep making great music. People are really receiving the new song Boku mo Aishiteru yo so well. Like, definitely support it. And sumimasen, excuse me there. But one thing I will also say in conclusion is, like I said, I will be honest that this was kind of the most vulnerable, uncomfortable album for me to make, because there was just so much darkness associated with it at the time. That's kind of what makes it beautiful. It really is very bluesy and broad and dark, but jazzy, and it's very experimental. And like I said, some of the highlights were, Corn on the Cob, A War of the Heart, My Unique Valentine, Patience is a Virtue, The Japanese Jazz Train. There were a lot of really good songs on this. So overall, I can't say that I don't like the record. I don't like the experience I had making it, but I like the lessons I learned and the personal growth and development that came as a result of making it. So I would definitely encourage people, if you haven't checked it out now, definitely check out My Unique Valentine, and the links below will lead you to buying it on iTunes or Apple Music. It's also on Spotify, all the major streaming platforms. So hopefully everybody enjoyed this presentation. and that you all kind of learned the story behind that album, what it is. And like I said, no hard feelings towards Shannon anymore. I mean, I'm going to be straight up and honest. It's never good to lie, it's better to be truthful. So I do admit that that's how it was. It wasn't exactly the most ideal thing I would have wanted, but that's their choice. You have to respect their decision. And it doesn't mean that my feelings were untrue. As Rob Lowe even said, your heart's in the right place. It's not really your fault if they don't go for it. It just means there's someone better out there for you. And hence why I'm working towards Hitomi-chan now. So, domo arigato, minasan. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day. Take care. Super Kami Guru Alucard. Peace out. Till next time.